if you think about what you normally see in your day-to-day lives, we'll first talk about that before we go into what you see most commonly in your clinics. But what do you see most commonly as you go about your day that people do that you think they should not be doing? Do you see something that is persistent, very common, that you say, gosh, I wish they wouldn't do that, or I wish they knew better? Is there any such thing?
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, I'm going to give a generic statement that applies not to dermatology, but to all medicine. If you have a problem, let's say with your finances, you go to your accountant. If you have a problem with something legal, you go to an attorney. If you have a problem that's medical, people tend to go to Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, their aunt, their uncle, their cousin, their nephew, their nieces. And then at point number 55, may come to the doctor saying that I have consulted the entire world. So having said that, the nonsense that's out there is ridiculous. And I think this is especially true in dermatology because now everyone who has a TikTok account, Instagram account, is a expert in nonsense. Dan, what?
I think that's a great point. And building on one of those social media trends, something that a lot of patients bring up to me and people on the street bring up to me is my skin is dry. I need to keep drinking more and more water. That's a more nuanced issue than what Vineet brought up, obviously, but it's one of those things where it's interesting because it gives you kind of a very broad idea of how good the skin is. You don't need to drink 8 gallons of water a day to keep your skin from being dry. And if you have dry skin, it's not a reason. The reason is not that you haven't been drinking enough water. I always say drink enough water so that you're not thirsty, but dry skin, especially severe dry skin, needs to be treated by a doctor, or at least will require the recommendations of a dermatologist. It's not a factor of should I drink more or less water. That's just one of those common things that for some reason has become ingrained in the national psyche, at least here in the United States, where I just have to keep drinking more water and that'll protect my skin. The skin's very resilient. It can handle a lot of stress.
One thing I will say is that, sometimes people look at dermatology and they think it's all aesthetics or it's all cosmetic. But, when we take care of patients, for example, a teenager with acne or a woman postpartum hair loss or a patient who is, let's say, older and has eczema that's getting worse because as you get older, you lose more water content in the skin. It actually can be, there's a lot of psychological kind of impact, patients with psoriasis and so forth, or hidradenitis suppurativa, and where they get these boils underneath their in their axilla, in their armpits, their groin, and so forth. And so there's a element to skin that's much deeper. And I think people have to realize that. And I think people have to address that. We have, patients who have rosacea who are shy to go out because they sometimes perceive that the spotlight's on them. They're self-conscious of their rosacea, or people who have rhinophyma, which is the enlargement of the nose because of the sebaceous glands. So one thing I do want to make a comment on is that that dermatology is more than just skin deep. There's a big psychological impact. And with the advent of social media, especially on young women and teenagers and young adults, the psychological impact is even bigger. So one should not dismiss a claim that if someone says, hey, I'm concerned by this, like hair loss, you may find a patient who cosmetically has phenomenal hair, but has experienced more hair loss. And for them, that could be the most devastating thing ever. So everything has to be put into context. So I just want to make that comment about psychology and dermatology.
Yeah, we call that quality of life issues. So if you see clinical studies, they always look at quality of life and how a condition affects the patient's quality of life and how a treatment improves it, right? And I think part of it, even though this is more than a cosmetic issue, is skin is very visible, right? If you have cancer, A lot of times no one knows, right? Unless you tell them, they don't know what's going on in your body. You can't see it either. But when you have a major skin condition, it can be extremely noticeable, and that vastly decreases your quality of life.